The US Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth says America will carry out more strikes on Iran today than any other day. He's just been briefing journalists at the Pentagon. He says the United States and Israel have hit 15,000 targets since launching their campaign 2 weeks ago. He also said Iran's new supreme leader, Mojtaba Khamenei, was wounded and likely disfigured. Asked about the strike on a school on the first day of the war in the Minab district, he said in which more than 100 girls were reported. He said an ongoing investigation was being carried out by an officer outside CENTCOM. There have been several explosions that have been heard across Tehran over the past few hours. State television reported a major blast close to a Al-Quds Day rally in Tehran, an annual protest in support of Palestinians and against Israel. One person is reported to have been killed. Let's hear some of what the Defence Secretary had to say.
Iran has no air defenses. Iran has no air force. Iran has no navy. Their missiles, their missile launchers and drones being destroyed or shot out of the sky. Their missile volume is down 90%. Their one-way attack drones yesterday, down 95%. And as the world is seeing, they are exercising sheer desperation in the Straits of Hormuz. Something we're dealing with, we have been dealing with it, and don't need to worry about it. Soon and very soon, all of Iran's defense companies will be destroyed. Iran's leadership is in no better shape. Desperate and hiding, they've gone underground, cowering. That's what rats do. We know the new so-called not-so-supreme leader is wounded and likely disfigured. He put out a statement yesterday, a weak one, actually, but there was no voice and there was no video. We will keep pressing. We will keep pushing, keep advancing. No quarter, no mercy for our enemies.
So another confident, bullish defence of the administration's war aims from Defence Secretary Pete Hegseth. Let's speak to our White House reporter, Bernd Dembusman. We don't need to worry about the disruption in the Gulf, said Pete Hegseth. We are dealing with it. There are a lot of European governments at the moment who are intensely worried about it, Bernd.
As are huge portions of the U.S. public. In the last few days, there had been some reporting that the Pentagon and the Trump administration had perhaps underestimated Iran's willingness and capacity to close the Strait of Hormuz, which, of course, has huge impact economically around the globe as well as domestically here in the U.S. So I think what the Secretary and General Kane were trying to do was reassure the public and the world, other governments, that they are degrading Iran's military capacity to a point where it doesn't pose a threat to shipping in the Strait of Hormuz and therefore to petrol prices around the world. But at the very least, any disruption or even any kind of diminishing of traffic going through the Strait of Hormuz has a huge economic impact, even if the strait is open for business. So I think that's a message we'll hear more from the Pentagon and from the White House in the coming days. That's really a very important part of their communications effort at the moment.
No doubt it is true that the US military, together with Israel, is degrading significantly Iran's ability to fire back. But the US president told G7 leaders in a virtual meeting on Wednesday, Bert, that Iran was about to surrender. Nobody knows who the leader is in Iran, he said, so there is no one that can announce the surrender. There seems to be a disconnect, it seems to me, from what the administration is saying and what the realities are on the ground. Because if we look at the pictures today from Iran, we've got Ali Larijani circulating among thousands of people that are out on the street, and no sign at all that the administration or the regime in Iran is about to fall.
I think there certainly is a disconnect, and in the message we heard from Iran's supreme leader yesterday, in which he didn't appear, but that message was very defiant and really showed no sign that Iran was willing to surrender. I think the other main unanswered question is what surrender actually looks like to the Trump administration, and then what happens afterwards. While Secretary Hegseth and General Kane provided very detailed point of view, just in terms of the military aspect of this conflict and the ability of Iran's Navy and Air Force and missile forces to operate. What they didn't really give any detail on is what the day after looks like. President Trump had at one point suggested that there could be kind of an Iranian version of Venezuela's Delcy Rodriguez, but by the Pentagon's own admissions, Iran's leadership has been decimated. So it's not really clear who that moderate voice could be or how they would rise to power given the new Supreme Leader's statement yesterday. I think that's perhaps the primary unanswered question on the part of the Pentagon and the Trump administration as things stand now.
Will they care about some of the voices now coming from Europe, Bern, that they're not giving them enough information on decisions they're taking? The one to waive sanctions on Russian oil at sea was reportedly given to European leaders just this morning. They don't agree with it. And of course, there are implications for European forces that are currently in the Middle East region. Will that criticism, the strength of that criticism that's starting to grow, bother the White House?
Well, I certainly think they'll hear the criticism. Yesterday, for example, we saw the first French military casualty from an Iranian strike on a target in Iraq, and I think that's something that'll be discussed with the U.S. government, that these military casualties, as well as the economic impact, isn't something necessarily that the administration had at least publicly warned Europe about. But at the same time, the administration and Secretary Hegseth in particular have been very bullish on this conflict, and they have said repeatedly now that they're going to keep going until their military objectives are met. So I think even in the face of European protest or European criticism about the way this conflict is being handled, certainly it'll keep going in the short term. I think the last thing the administration would want would to be seen as kind of holding back as a result of criticism from allies. Of course, this administration, they are very keen to say they have an America first foreign policy, and I think that's going to drive their decision making going forward.
Bernd de Bussmann in Washington, thank you very much for that.